Does this ring a bell? You bring a new plant home from the store and pop him in a place that will brighten up your home. You get that gooey feeling inside because of how great he looks, and then give him a quick drink and go off on your merry business. A few days later, you notice that your little fella is looking a bit sad and droopy, so you top him up with some water. The next day, you notice that he's not really perked up that much, so maybe you didn't give him enough. So off you go to the sink to fill up your watering can again and give him a bit more. These plants are thirstier than you thought. A couple of days later and he's still not looking his best, and now he's starting to show a couple of yellow leaves. And you're noticing some brown edges on the leaves too. He can't need more water, can he? I best top him up again and see if that does the trick, you say to yourself, and you pour some more water onto the surface of the soil. You're lying in bed that night and a thought occurs to you. Maybe he wants his dinner. So when you wake up in the morning, you give him a bit more water, but this time you've added some lovely fertiliser. This will sort him out, you say to yourself. But it doesn't. He's actually looking thirstier than ever. The majority of the leaves are droopy and he's looking like he's on death's door. You have a little rummage around and notice that the stems are feeling a bit soft. The store has sold me a dud, you think to yourself angrily before moving on with your day. This little story probably resonates with you, and it certainly does me too, because this was exactly what used to happen to Mrs. Sheffield every time she bought a plant. Okay, I can take some of the blame too, I guess. So where did it all go wrong for our green little mister for him to see his untimely demise? Basically, he was drowning. Where you thought he needed a drink, he actually needed some respite from your watering can. You see, the tricky thing with indoor plants is that the signs of under and overwatering are pretty much the same, and it catches so many would-be plant folk out, including yours truly. This is why I created my troubleshooting handbook that thousands of plant parents have downloaded for free, and you can get yours in the description to this video. Droopy leaves, yellowing, brown edges, all signs of distress you get from a plant when you either under or overwater. Most of the time we assume underwatering, so make things so much worse by continuing to give yet more water to try and solve the problem. Here's the thing, indoor plants generally need much less water than you're probably giving them, and I mean much less. I will spill the beans on how you can tell for sure in a sec, but if you're watering your little guy every 2, 3 or even 4 days, you're probably slowly killing them with kindness. I've got over 200 of the little fellas of all different shapes and sizes with all sorts of different wants and dislikes, but they all share the same distaste: too much water. In general, I tend to water mine roughly every 10 days, but please don't take that as some sort of guide and turn off the video. To become a true plant whisperer, or even just someone with a few healthy plants in their home, there's a few things you need to do to get this watering malarkey right, and it starts with knowing when your little guy's thirsty. Now, this is the biggest piece of plant advice anyone can give you. It really does go a long way to having a thriving plant instead of a droopy mess. Never water blindly. That means never pour water over the soil without checking first. I get it, we've all been there, myself included. I mean, the soil looks dry on top, plus we're all busy people and we've all got better things to be doing than checking every single plant thoroughly, but honestly, it doesn't have to be that time consuming. I've got a couple of tricks up my sleeve that will help you. Firstly, it is nearly impossible to tell if a plant is ready for a drink just by judging the surface of the soil. I mean, that's the first thing that's going to dry out, right? Underneath could be a swamp, and we've been making things a whole lot worse by pouring yet more water in. We need to not just scratch the surface, but instead have a good rummage. The classic way is to stick your finger as far into the soil as it will go and feel for moisture. Wet and he's not thirsty. Dry, then have at it. But who wants a wet, muddy finger from all the plant fingering? Plus, how good are you at actually feeling for wetness with your finger? I mean, the human senses aren't the most reliable after all. There are 2 other options. Both are much lessy, and one is super quick. First is to invest in the world's greatest invention, the moisture meter. Long-time subscribers will have heard me bang on about these for a long while now, so I'll keep it short. You simply stick it in and it tells you exactly what is going on, no more guessing. And the one I use is in my Amazon store, which is linked in the description. Option 2 is the one I favour these days, but in truth it's a little bit more advanced and requires you to learn your plant a little. Simply pick him up and feel how light he is. Wild, eh? If the pot feels heavy compared to the foliage, then wait another few days and check again. You want to water him when his private parts are feeling like they've not got too much liquid knocking about. It does take some judging and getting to know him, but it is quick and it's easy. But what if you're an absolute beginner and are really uncertain about how heavy the pot should feel? Well, there is a way around this that I'm a big fan of. I'm going to take a guess on how you're watering your little guy. You're probably filling up your watering can and pouring some water over the surface of the soil until you feel like the soil is wet enough. This is my least favourite way of doing things. I prefer to do it like this, and here's why. It's much more difficult to overwater him like this. Sounds counterintuitive, I know, but hear me out. Overwatering happens when the plant is made to sit in a swampy mess for weeks or months on end. This normally happens because the parent is oblivious to what's really going on, or they assume the plant is thirsty when in fact the reverse is true. When you water like this though, it's much easier to see if the plant is sat in a puddle. So I pick up the plastic pot that he's living in and feel that he's pretty light, so I fill the cash pot about 1/3 of the way up and sit him back down. When I come back, roughly a week or so later, to check in on him, it's easy to see whether he's sat in a puddle or not. If he is, then I know I've gone wrong somewhere. Once you get into the routine, you start to learn exactly how much water to add and how long it takes to drink it up. And the best thing about bottom watering is that it's absolutely brilliant for your plant. The water wicks up evenly through the soil so there are no dry patches, and roots are encouraged to grow downwards in search of the water. It's these two things that make for a very happy plant, trust me. Now, all of this only works if one simple thing is in place, and it's even more important if you want to continue top watering. Check out this little peperomia. What's the one thing you notice about him? Well, check out his private parts. He's been plonked straight into a decorative pot. There's no plastic pot in sight. This is a rarity in my home. 99% of my plants are living in plastic pots sat inside decorative pots. But why all the drama, I hear you cry? Because of these little things. These will make or break your little guys and gals. Without these, the dangers of them living in a swamp are tripled at least. If I give this peperomia a bit too much water, then there's literally nothing I can do to help, apart from watching him getting more grumpy as he slowly dries out. If he was living in one of these though, like most of his friends and family are, then no probs. The excess can simply trickle away, and they obviously make bottom watering possible. Now, you're probably sat there feeling a bit worried about all the doom mongering I've been offering up so far in this video, and you might think that the best course of action is to water your green guys and gals a lot more sparingly. But this would be a disaster, my plant friend. Nothing would be worse for your plant than doing this. But you said to stop watering so much, Mr. Sheffield, so that's what I'm doing. It might sound counterintuitive, but when you come to watering, this is how you should do it. But that'll kill him, surely. Nope, and here's why. For a plant to be happy and thriving, he needs his H2O just as much as you and me, although not as often as I've already mentioned. This means we absolutely need to make sure all the roots get a good thorough drink, and that means drenching the root ball fully. The thing that used to flummox me about all this overwatering nonsense was getting my head around quantity versus frequency. But I've now learned that the crux of it is this. When you come to water, you can't give it too much. I promise you this is true. You could be there all day watering over the sink and your plant won't bat an eyelid. The trouble only starts to happen when we water too frequently, as hopefully I demonstrated at the beginning of this video. It's when the roots are sat in saturated soil for too long that the plant really gets to be in his bonnet. This is the truth about overwatering and why it's killing your plant. It's not the water that is doing the damage, it's the lack of oxygen. I mean, you might have been sat there thinking about all those plants that live in water or hydroponically. How do they do it? Well, simply because water has plentiful oxygen, soggy soil doesn't. So when plants are sat in an environment that is starved of oxygen, they begin to rot, and it's curtains for your little guy. So the trick is to water deeply but infrequently. Deeply means getting all the soil fully saturated. The last thing we want is for there to be dry patches of soil in the pot. Roots hate this. Bottom watering is brilliant in this case. If you add enough, which is normally about 1/3 of the way up the pot, you're watering thoroughly as well as evenly. No dry patches. Now, there is something else that will make or break all of this that I haven't mentioned yet. Soil. The soil mix you make for your plants will make the difference between one that is happy as Larry or one that's as miserable as Mary. In fact, the worst thing you can do to your indoor plant is to use standard soil or compost and I go through all the detail in this video here, so you should most definitely watch this next, and I'll see you there.